I'm here with Tammy from Spirit Within. She's a psychic, intuitive, energy practitioner, Reiki master and healer. We are in the room where the readings and healings take place. Thank you for having me.
No worries, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so when did you first realise you had psychic abilities?
So this would be probably that I can remember being about 8 years old. It could be just stuff that is about to happen, but I picked up very early. For example, if I heard an ambulance sirens, I would say to my mum, that's so-and-so's dad, he's had a heart attack. And my mum would look quite shocked at me and say, Tammy, don't speak like that, you don't know that. And then the next day we would get the news that it came true. So quite earlier on that I felt that I had this gift.
How did your family respond to that?
Depending on who you talk to in my family, but you could sort of work out who you could tell, because some people would, maybe not believe it, or they really didn't understand it themselves. So my mum was always a very good support, and my nana, my sister, living with this, growing up, things would happen, and we would look back now and we go, oh my gosh, so yeah, not everyone was open to it, but I think it's come a lot more better as I've grown into an adult now, because they look back and go, oh my gosh. So yeah, it just depends.
And did you trust it initially, or did you doubt those messages?
Sometimes I doubt it and think, is that a coincidence, or am I going crazy? But they were so strong, and stuff that I would see, that I believed it 90% of the time.
And when you would get those messages, were they often oral messages, or were they visual, or dreams?
Yeah, dreams definitely is a big one for me. It's like a reoccurring message that comes to you. It's like your thoughts, but until you act on it or tell somebody, it doesn't leave me alone.
And do you sometimes see the spirits visually?
I see silhouettes. I see sometimes I look and I can see like a white, like a colour, or I know that there's a feeling standing next to me. Sometimes there's a movement or a touch. It varies, and it's all very different. So I don't see a human, but I see a silhouette or like a watery wash in appearance.
Are you able to give any examples too from some of the dreams that you've had?
So, for example, my son, he's got a friend, his best friend that we've grown up with since he was a little boy, and he went away on a trip, but I didn't actually know he was away in Victoria. And I had a dream the night that he was staying over there, that I woke up and it was quite a sort of a sad dream, because he was in blood and he was hurt, and I thought, oh, something's wrong with him. So I woke up and I thought, oh, it's a dream, there's some sign here. I went to bed and got up and rang my son, and he was away in Victoria, and he had just witnessed a car crash, and the man unfortunately died in his arms, and that was the blood that I was referring to. So that's an example with a dream. The dream could also be very positive. So when I work with my clients, I've met them only once. They may go, and then that night I'm not even thinking about them, and I dream something, and it's a message. It could be about a job. It could be something very simple, but I need to tell them because I know my dreams.
Is psychic ability something that you can develop, or is it something that's just there?
For me personally, I definitely feel that you can develop it. I do feel that you can always also be born with something too, like myself, because if I doubted myself in my younger years going through high school, I never told anyone because I may have been embarrassed to go, oh, they're not going to believe me. So I've worked on mine. I had a full-time job, and I was a nurse, and I've done many different careers, and it's led me back to this. And I have worked on myself, because when you're in a busy job and your mind has got so much going on and you don't have a break, you can't see and have clarity for the stuff that they're trying to get through to you, like the messages. So I definitely believe that you can work on stuff, and I think that everyone can tap into something, being in touch with yourself. Mine personally is my dreams and my visions, and this inner knowing that I just know stuff and I don't know how I know it to the extent.
And how can you work on that?
Meditation. So the healings is what has really helped me, and I think it's made me grow on a deeper level. I've always had healings myself, But in the last 10 years, I've done healing courses and worked with energy, and that's changed my life even more so. When you're calm and everything's aligned, you can tap into this on a deeper level. And I've even had friends come up to the farm and say, you know, they knew me back years ago when I used to work full-time in the funeral industry, and they said I've never looked happier and calmer. I'm in touch with myself. There's a lot of trust. So yeah, I definitely feel that people can work on this.
If someone's working on this and they're getting intuitive feelings about things, but they're not always sure whether it's their thoughts or whether it's an intuition, how can they tell the difference?
Well, I think it's like a thought. We're humans. We have thoughts. We have judgments. But mine will come at a very random time. Like I say, I'll be thinking with my family, but then all of a sudden this odd thought comes to me. So I might go, okay, that's maybe something to think about. If it comes back to me, it's reoccurring. That's how I determine whether or not it's my intuition or if it's just a normal human thought and my guidance coming through. And I guess when you've had it since a young age, like me, you're pretty good at determining what is what. And again, the more that I've lived on the farm and meditated and did mindfulness and all of these things, it's played a big role in being able to determine that.
And when you're out, for example, if you're shopping or doing something around a lot of people, do you get random messages coming through for people that you don't know?
Yes.
And and if so, will you tell the people?
Just depends. I mean, I've been in really weird circumstances, and I'll give you an example because it just makes me laugh. My husband is a boxing coach and my son, and we do a lot in the boxing industry, and I could be in a boxing tournament and I'd be sitting next to somebody, which is a true story, and I just turned to this gentleman and I felt something, but it was an overwhelming feeling that I must tell him. And then sometimes I go, oh, do I hold back? And then I'm like, no, Tammy, and it kept hassling me. So I pulled this man aside, and I didn't say it in front of everyone. I didn't try to shame him. I just said, this is what it is, the message. And the gentleman welled up with tears in a good way and thanked me. He goes, I don't know who you are or whatever, but thank you for telling me because that is spot on. And it could have been just something, you know, personal that he could relate to. It doesn't matter what it means for me. It's just something that I felt that I needed to tell him. But this is the thing that it happens when I'm in a place and I was at an early beach holiday, my very first holidays with my husband, and a waitress came over and I was like, I had this overwhelming feeling, and I said to my husband, I got to tell this young lady something. And he's like scavenging around going, here's the old business card. And then I'm pen, and we find a pen. And so I'm writing a little message on the note for her. And then she comes over and I said, here, please take this. It's up to you what you do with it. And she walked off and you could see the lady wiping her tears, and she come back over and said thank you to me.
I heard that you also have a story relating to how you met your husband. Perhaps you could go into that with us.
Yeah, so to cut a long story short, my dad was on a dating site years ago. We've been together 26 years, and it was back in the advertiser, and it was in a connections advertisement. Long story short, Chad's mum, my husband's name's Chad, his mum answered the advertisement and ended up dating only once or twice. But I went with my dad and my husband went with his mum, and we all met together. And we had just one dinner. It was a barbecue, and it was at his mum's house. And we all got along well. I liked my husband. I thought he was very nice. But that was it. A year later, and it was, I don't know exactly to the month, but it was around about a year later. My dad never lasted with his mum. It was just sort of like a little bit of a dating thing that they had. And they separated. And a year later, I had a dream. And people still say to me, oh my gosh, you acted on that dream. I had made love to my husband by candlelight. And I got up and I said to my sister, I'm going to marry Dad's ex-girlfriend's son. And she goes, oh no. And yes, we got the little book out and we ended up finding my mother-in-law now, her number. And my sister rang and got in contact and said, you wouldn't believe this, I'm Rob's daughter, which was my sister. Do you remember Tammy? Yes, I do. Would Chad be single by any chance? Yes, he was. And that's how we connected. So this was from a dream.
And did you tell him straight away that about your dream and that
Yes.
you would get married?
Yes.
Okay, even when you just
Actually,
met.
I don't know if I said marriage because it would have put him off. But he knows very clearly about my dream and still can't believe. We've only told the kids recently, probably, I don't know, 5 years ago that was true. And they all, yeah, whatever, mum and dad, you know. And yes, no, it is a true story that I acted on a dream.
And how did he respond when you first told him?
Yeah, he was like, okay. It didn't pan out exactly like the dream. There was, it was in a different place and I don't know where it was, but the point was that, yes, we were going to get married and I seen that. So that's a story I do to my clients, and many clients that would be probably watching this would know this story because, And this is why I encourage people, if I'm in a reading myself with a client, if they're feeling something so strongly, not obviously just to that extent, but you got to remember I've had this for a very long time. I believed it so much because they never let me down with what I was given.
So would you say with partners and relationships, do you think that relationships often are built around some sort of connection from maybe a previous life? Yeah, like what would you say?
And we often laugh, and my husband would say the same. We think that we've known each other from a past life. We don't know how, we don't know the full extent, but some things we just know so well about each other and we can trigger each other so well, and stuff that I have visions that I knew him from somebody else, somewhere else. So yes, no, we often have that conversation because I'm a big believer in past lives and and that's why I find that there's a knowing that there's stuff that I feel that I know so deeply and believe with all my fibre that it's correct, but I sometimes can't explain it.
If someone's single and they're wanting a relationship where they connect really well with the person, is it something that you can try to manifest, or is it something that'll just happen if it happens?
Well, you often hear stories about ladies in particular that come to me and there may be a relationship that they're dreaming about somebody and they may have never been with them yet, they may have never even encountered anything with them, but their love is so deep and it feels like they know them from a past life too. You know, but the thing is too, not all relationships work out, even if you may have dreams about someone. We have many soulmates, you know, but depending on each person's circumstance, depending on what I will say to them, what I think that they should do, my advice would be.
And is your husband psychic as well?
He would deny it, but living my journey for all these years, and he's helped me. He supports me in many ways, and he's one of my biggest fans, and he might downplay it to me to keep me at a ground level, but when he's with other people, he does really believe in what I do. And if he thinks somebody needs a healing or a reading or my guidance can help, he will definitely give him my number. There's been times where Chad has seen stuff too. Like, for example, when we purchased our house here in the farm, he felt a presence, and every house we've been in, not a bad, he feels very comfortable, but there's always a presence that he feels, and he felt it was the place that we needed to be. He also woke up one night when someone was about to pass away. He was very sick and he was a family friend to us, and he had a visualisation that his name was Frank standing over me, and Frank ended up dying that week, but it was like he was saying goodbye. It was in the middle of the night and it was a silhouette, the same sort of thing that I feel when I see people. He knew it was Frank, and he had his legs though, but unfortunately Frank had lost his legs to diabetes. He had them amputated, and it was like it was showing him that Frank is going to pass away, but when he goes home, as we say, that he's going to have his legs back. And we use that going home as when we pass over. It's where we go home and we're at peace and no suffering.
And have you had any experiences relating to pre-birth or near-death experiences or like out-of-body experiences?
Yep.
Or even like, say, with seeing UFOs and that type of thing, because I know that can also sometimes connect with people that are like psychic.
I haven't seen any UFOs. I have had a near-death experience only 1 year ago. It was just a normal operation that I was going into, but we had complications because I was internally bleeding. I went into hospital on the Tuesday, and that morning of the hospital operation, I felt something wasn't right. And even before I put me under anaesthetic, my body it felt like saying, it's going to be a journey. There's something that's not right here, but you're going to be okay. So I had the hysterectomy, and 2 days later, there was internal bleeding, and it was an 80% mortality rate, which I survived. And while I went into the resus room in emergency and had blood transfusions and iron transfusions, laying on my back with all these doctors and nurses, there was something in my mind telling me, and this is those messages that I get, you're going home, you're going to be fine. So I was back into an emergency operation again, in intensive care for a week. And of course I survived, and I knew that I was coming home. And the connection to my youngest son, Lucas, he at the time knew. They all got a call to go in and say, just in case your mum's not going to make it. Something in his mind was telling him, mum's going to be okay, there's no need for concern. My dad was panicking and really getting, really upset and distressed. Lucas was calm, and it was like we connected. And we've had that connection. A couple of my boys have that with me as well. So that was only a year ago, and I knew that I was coming home, but my body was very sick. I didn't see anybody, I didn't see any light, I didn't feel anything. It was clear that I knew that I was going home. And when I think about that morning of the operation, I knew that something was going to turn pear-shaped.
And do you fear death at all?
No. No, not in any way. I don't want to die now because I have a really good life. I don't want to leave my children. I don't want to make it to a ripe old age, but there's no way I fear death.
And where do you feel those messages are coming from? Is it from a specific entity or a combination of?
Going back to my birth, I forgot to say when you asked me my recollection of how old I was about 8. I do remember when I was born, and it was like a tunnel of white light. That's what I remember as a little girl born. My mum always used to ask for the angels to look after me, and I've always taken that on and always, may an angel be by your side. I work with angels. So my thing is, and this is different to everybody, mine's angelic, and I do angel cards, and I use a lot of angel energy. So mine is the angels. So it's just like I know it so well to me when it said to me, you're going home. It was like the angels telling me, you've got this, it's all good.
And is it like one specific angel or?
Angels in general, Archangel Michael, but depending on if I'm healing, I'll use Archangel Raphael, but angels in general to me.
I heard also that you worked in a funeral parlour before. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about that and some of the experiences you had relating to that.
My time in the funeral industry was something I'll never forget. I loved it. The hours is what I couldn't keep up with. Sometimes it was 7 days, 8 days, 12 days straight. And I lost a bit of myself because I'm so pedantic about my work and what I put in. I never had family time, and that's one of my decisions from leaving. I learned what I needed to. It was a part of my journey being a funeral director with White Lady Funerals. I have clients that come for readings from the people I met in the industry because some of the signs that I would pick up. So I could be standing next to somebody in a funeral and I feel my body would heat up and I would feel something, and I would turn to them and I would say, oh, is that your grandmother's ring you're wearing? And they would look at me like, oh, how did you know that? I never shared that with you. The experiences of the family, the signs that they would tell me and share, and we witnessed together. If someone had passed over, so-and-so left breadcrumbs the week after he died on the board and I was the only one living in the house, just stuff that is not a coincidence. It is real life stuff from so many different people, so many walks of life coming and saying the same thing. A mobile phone with no battery ringing the day of the son's funeral. People wanted me to write a book because every little moment was so precious, and I have got so many stories, but they all match up to when someone passes over, there is real signs for people to see the loved ones that they leave behind. And some of these signs can be music. Music is a very big, profound one. Feathers, reoccurring numbers. But, like I said, the breadcrumbs on a board where the mum lived with the son and the week after, that's pretty, you can't say that's, that's not crazy.
And in a funeral setting, could you often sense spirits around at the funeral itself?
I felt presence behind. Like I said, I don't see people standing there. But like I said, mine's more of like I had visions for the family. Like I felt like I knew them. I felt that in some cases I was picked out for the family, because I do believe that we have certain soul groups. So if someone in life was similar to me in my beliefs, it was like they picked me out for their loved one. And I would always get the comment, you always get old people's funerals. I never had babies, touch wood. And I always just get lovely old people that passed away and lovely families to deal with. And I always felt that somehow they picked me out to do the funeral for them.
And what advice would you give to someone if they're going through the grief of losing a loved one and how to work through that?
Yeah. People sometimes come to me and say they don't feel their loved one's presence for weeks after, because they're going through such a traumatic experience and grief. And I find it comes a bit later on. And when they've got so much going on and they've got funerals to deal with and all of these things that you have to, deal with and manage after someone passes. But it's in those quiet moments when a song comes on the radio. And for example, I did a funeral for a lady and the song was called Eileen, and that her name was Eileen, and the husband was playing it every day after the funeral. Feathers that drop. I actually seen a cup physically move on a table while I was in an arrangement with a family, and it just went like this on the table, and the family looked at me and I was just like, oh. So stuff that happens is pretty amazing.
Are some of the messages that you get, do they also relate to what happens after we die, like why we're here, why we struggle with certain things, like what the meaning of our lives are?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like my personal feelings on this is we're all here to learn lessons, and if we don't learn them on this lifetime, we're going to come back and learn them again. And some people try so hard, but they don't actually get, they haven't been given the tools on this lifetime to do it, and it could be from trauma. But yeah, I feel like I personally have lived many lifetimes because the knowledge I brought into this lifetime. That's what I feel. But it's like my dad, for instance. My dad was a drinker, went down a path that he really didn't want to. That wasn't his plan. And then a psychic mentor of mine, who was 20 years that I had known her, when my dad passed away, she said he's gone home and he's very sorry. His life turned out to be something very different than what he had planned. And it was so true to what my dad was. He had an addiction. He wanted to be, he was always a loving father, but yeah, he had an addiction to alcohol, which ended up sending him on a different road. So I feel that he will come back and learn those lessons that he's chose again. And your dad could be your brother in another life. It doesn't have to be he comes as a father. You could be with that person again. I feel that in this life, my mum, she was my sister in another life.
So do you feel that we plan our lives in advance?
I think there's an aspect of it. Some people think that we pick our parents, and I would definitely pick my mum every lifetime because she's such an amazing mum. And like I do believe I could have been her sister, because mum's one of my best friends, and yeah, I'm here to guide her in many ways.
Sometimes also in life we go through challenges and challenging times, and it's hard to find the meaning in those times because it's easy to go into like, why am I here? Why is this happening to me? So what do you feel is the benefit or the meaning of suffering that we all go through in different ways?
Well, I believe life, we were so blessed to be given life, and there is bad stuff that happens in life and very sad stuff. And it's like I find that the more I've tapped in spiritually to myself and followed my life lessons, because oh my gosh, I've had my life lessons. I have learned from many mistakes, but this, I wouldn't change any of my life because it's brought me to where I am now. And it's the way in a circumstance, if there is sorrow or something bad going on, it's the way you can cope. It's the tools that now I know how to get myself out of a spot. If I'm feeling anxious or fearful, I know what to do. I know how to use the tools of spirituality to help me.
What would you suggest doing if someone is feeling particularly anxious or fearful?
I'm a big believer in breath work, and it's about when we're feeling, not acting on if someone has upset you, not acting straight away, stepping back and thinking about your response. Because when you're in that moment and your breathing is out of whack and you can't think, it's like if you take a step back, breathe, and then respond when you're calm. Breathing is everything, and I've learnt that my breaths are so much deeper. And I see a lot of clients come from town and they've got busy 9 to 5 jobs and they're racing around. They need to implement time to have meditation, or even a walk on the beach, water, something that soothes your soul.
Could you tell us a little bit about the work that you do, both the healing work and also the psychic work as well?
Mm-hmm. So how I come across cards now, all of my cards that I've gained in my life has been on my journey. So when I was about 18, it always seemed to be that I would always run into psychic people or mentors, and they would always say, you're going to be doing cards. And if you told me that, years ago, my reaction was, oh, okay, cards. They are so spot on. They've never let me down. They give you guidance. And people often say or make the comment, Tammy, my cards, if I buy them, they wouldn't turn out like these. Well, I don't know why, but I was always meant to do cards. They work, they give people guidance, and they're very loving. And they say in a really delicate way. It's not aggressive, it's a real gentle. If there's any issues that we need to work on, it'll come. Readings, I've been doing for 20 years on and off. Now, obviously, full-time with my healings. Healings are in the last 8 years, like I said earlier. And I've always personally had healings in my life. And I remember when my first one was and how my body reacted. But yeah, when I did my Reiki 1 and Reiki 2 and my masters, changed my life. I'm not just Reiki. I say to people, I put my own thing on it. I use the angels, I use my love and the room and the energy, but I do use a bit of Reiki. So my advice to people too, if they ever want to do courses in healing, you've got to find what works for you. I don't do exactly what Reiki offers. I'm a little bit of Reiki, I'm a little bit of energy, and I'll just Tammy, I put my stuff into it as well. Healings can also bring up stuff as well. People can come through. We've had a lot of messages when I'm touching somebody, and it comes to me so quickly. It'll come to me in a thought, and I'm like, I need to tell the client that when they get off the healing bed. And at the end of each healing, I go out and write some notes, and I tell the client what I picked up in their body or what messages come through.
So before we finish up, could you leave us with one last life lesson that your work has taught you?
Never, ever doubt or deny your gut feelings. In the past, it has got me into trouble by not following my intuition. I will never not follow my gut instincts ever again. It has taken me on a journey. Yes, there is lessons along the way. Don't think that spirituality is ever going to give you an easy life. But when you get to a stage in your life that you've worked to and you've grown and you've worked on yourself, you reach a place of fulfillment. And all I can say is, it's not coincidence. It is real stuff. And as you can see, I am real. And this is real. It is not hocus pocus. It is real life stuff.
Well, Tammy, thank you for your message and thank you for doing this interview.
Thank you, Thomas.